Today's the big day, and I'm going to be launching the ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo today. And I'm going to let everybody know the live stream is going on now. Yep, go on board. I'll try to check out Alita Battle Angel, but it's not playing in my area right now. What's up, Ghost Skittle? I'm getting ready to announce the live stream. I'm gonna get ready to get the live stream on right about now. Get it going. I've left a link to the Indiegogo in the chat, and I'm going to talk a bit more about the ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo. Now, as everybody who has been watching my channel for some time knows, that I have been writing the ISIS series since 2012, and usually when I write the ISIS series, it's in the form of books like these. These are short books. So that's what the ISIS series books usually are. There are books like these. They're stories that are in single, self-contained volumes, and they chronicle the adventures of Isis, the goddess next door. Now, originally, back in 1999, when I originally created the Isis character, I originally planned for her to be featured in a comic book. However, I never really had the money, and I didn't have access to the resources to do a comic book. And it was just something that I had to do in the form of what they call superhero prose fiction. Now, I've been doing ISIS series books since 2012, and I started out by just doing hand-drawn covers like ones that I featured on the original ISIS All About the Goddess. However, in 2014, I hired Bill Walko to design the cover for the first ISIS cover, ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. And since then, I have been using Bill Walko's art and hiring Bill Walko to design covers for ISIS series books. So he has been the artist for most of the new ISIS series books. Hold on one second, I gotta get them out of the box. All the new ISIS series books, like Night of the Vampires, Bride of Dracula, Escape from Transylvania, and the ISIS series book that the graphic novel is based on, ISIS All That Glitters. So this is the story that the ISIS graphic novel is going to be based on, and I wanted to use this story as the first story in the ISIS graphic novel because this is a story that is something that I believe comic fans would enjoy, because the comic I am trying to raise funds for is going to be an all ages, family friendly comic that anyone from the age of 8 to 80 can read. And it's going to be a comic that features a story where the goddess next door takes on this bikini clad bank robber known as Goldenshine. And this is a story where I show that it's possible to make a story featuring a superhero taking on bank robbers and make it fun, fresh, and enjoyable for readers of today. Because many comic book editors today, they really don't believe in doing a story about something like superheroes taking on bank robbers. But I wanted to do something where I could take what many people call a hokey concept, like superheroes taking on bank robbers, and make it fresh and fun. And I make it fresh and fun by showing things like how a bank robber like Goldenshine wants things like likes on social media, how she wants attention on social media, and how that things relate to today. And with this story, I wanted to show that it was possible to, again, make that type of story fun and accessible. Now, the feedback I have received from many comic fans, this is what really encouraged me to go out here and do this Indiegogo, because a lot of the comic fans that I have shown the script to, they have really enjoyed the script. And a lot of people have said that this is just like an old school Marvel comic or an old school DC comic from back in the 80s. And that's what I was going for with the story of Isis, All That Glitters, is I wanted to give people the kind of comic book I grew up reading back in the 1980s and the early 1990s. Now, back in the 80s and the early 90s, oftentimes comic books were very all ages. They were very family friendly, and they were very accessible to new readers. And it looks like from the feedback I have received from most people out here that people are having no problem picking up the Isis series, and they're not having any problem dealing with continuity issues with this new story. So this new story, readers are getting on, and I wanted to do something special for my readers with this graphic novel. I wanted to give them the first Isis series story that was all a comic book. So with this Indiegogo, I'm looking to raise the funds so that I can take the story from All That Glitters and turn it into a graphic novel for all of my readers, and show everyone that an Isis series story can work as a comic book. Because again, it was originally my plan to turn Isis into a comic book, and many people who read my Isis series stories say that they read just like comic books. So with this story, I want to see if my story can work in a comic book, and I wanted to create a platform to see where my writing would work, and to see if Bill's art, give him a showcase for his art, so that everybody can see what a great artist he is. Because Bill has done an amazing job on this cover, Isis All That Glitters, and many of the other Isis series book covers, like Escape from Transylvania and Bride of Dracula, which everybody loves this cover, and Night of the Vampires and Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. They really enjoy Bill's art on the covers, and they love it on the covers of books like Easting the Sands of Time as well. So people really love Bill's art. They compare him to Bruce Timm in some cases, and I wanted to be able to give him a platform where we can see how great his art works in a graphic novel. And I wanted to go out here and see if one of my stories would work well in a comic, because one of the things that I learned from working with Bill is how to go out here and make a story work in the comic book medium. Because in order for me to design covers like these, I actually have to write them out. I have to write out the storyboard for them. And I have to do the sketching of the concept art. And usually what most artists like Bill Walko have to work with are, sketches like these. This is a concept art for my Dark Succubus for John Haynes. This is the concept art they usually work with. And I'm not that great of an artist, so I hire comic pros to design my covers, and that's how I get the art for my books. So that's what I do because I love comics, and I really want to go out here and create a great comic for everyone. And I really want to create a fun comic for everyone. When it comes down to this Indiegogo, this is what I want to give everybody: a really fun, family-friendly comic. And I want to give everybody the kind of comic that you would have no problem handing to an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and really just get them into characters. That's what I want to do with this comic, because when I look at what they're producing today in the comic book industry, there's not many comics out there that are all ages. And that's something that I feel is really wrong with the industry, is that we're producing comics either for non-existent audiences like your so-called SJWs, or we're creating comics for people who are at my age, which is I'm 45 years old, and that's not where we need to be. What we want to do, as I see it, is bring back the young kids and bring back the older people, and not just the older people, bring in the younger people and the older people, because when it comes down to ISIS series stories, I get people ranging from tweens to teens all the way to people in their 60s and their 70s. So I get all ages reading my stories, and that's why I want to do this comic book. I'm going to read some of the live chats. Thank you, Paula, for picking up one of my books from Barnes & Noble. I really appreciate it. Edward Gaines asked me about Goldenshine. Well, Goldenshine is a villain I came up with way back in the early 2000s. And this was a villain that I came up with who was kind of based on fashion models and the modeling industry. And I just decided to take that concept and have a little fun with it, where we have this scientist who goes around doing these bank robberies in bikinis in the hopes of getting fame for herself, which is and another thing I was making fun of was online fame. And she wants to be online famous. So she participates in these robberies, so where she gets the finest things in life, and she gets online infamy on places like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, where she's constantly checking out her likes, and she's checking out all the things on as she tries to get this attention. Now, ISIS is trying to stop this Goldenshine in this story. And in this story, I really want to show the importance of your everyday superheroes, because I believe that the comic book industry has really gone way too far with the, I don't know what's going on. Is it buffering? I don't know. Because I'm getting signals here, but I'm still getting signals. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, but I wanted to show that it was, oh, was it going? Okay, but with comic books, I wanted to show that it could be fun and it could be entertaining, and it's easy to do an all ages, family friendly comic. And again, with the ISIS character, with the Goldenshine situation, I wanted to show that with this bikini clad bank robber, the importance of what I call everyday superheroes, because with everyday superheroes, these are heroes who are serving in the community. And I believe that comic books have gone too far from the whole concept of everyday superheroes. We're more about these giant events, and we're more about these mega crossovers where everything takes over 60 issues. And I want to get back to just selling an individual story where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's what I want to do with the ISIS All That Glitters graphic novel, is give you that story that is in one self-contained volume, and you can pick up that book, read that story, and you can just either continue to pick up the next ISIS series book, or you could go back and pick up later ISIS series books. So that's what I want to do with the ISIS graphic novel, is I want to give you, again, a fun, easy to access story, a story that you can have no problem sharing with your family and friends. And I want to give you a comic book that would be just fun, just like the ones I used to pick up off the newsstand and off the rack of the comic book stores in the late 80s and early 90s. Now, the cost for this Indiegogo is going to be about $25,000. Now, all the costs that are entailed in putting together this comic are the art, because Bill Walko's art is going to be $9,300, and that's a fixed cost. So the art is going to be $9,300 straight, and that's nothing. There's nothing I can do to change that. That's just Bill Walko's rate. But what you're getting for that rate is some extremely high quality art, and it's definitely worth it. And I'm looking forward to working with Bill on this comic, because I really love his art. It looks great, and I want to see what it's going to look like in a full graphic novel. Now, the graphic novel with Bill's art is going to be 62 pages, and in those 62 pages, you're going to get two stories. You're going to get ISIS All That Glitters, which is the main story, and you're going to get a second story, East Steam No Good Deed. So you're going to get two stories featuring the goddess next door and the devilish diva, and both of those stories are going to follow the theme of everyday superheroes, and they're going to follow the theme of heroines taking on robbers of some sort. And the reason why, again, I want to do this is because I want to show how heroes contribute to the community. So that's the original plan for the ISIS graphic novel, is I want to show you the everyday superhero, because, again, I believe that the big problem with comics is we don't see heroes in the community. And because we don't see heroes in the community, that's why people just aren't buying comics anymore. And they're not buying comics because they don't see themselves in the comics. Most people don't see how superheroes help out in the community. They don't see how superheroes serve in the community, because everything with comics today has gotten so insular. And that's one of the reasons why I did the stories, to try to reconnect readers to these characters, to superheroes, and see what's great about them. And again, the cost for the art is $25,000. No, not $25,000. The overall cost of the project is $25,000. The big cost is Bill Walko's art, which is $9,300. And after that comes the colorist, who I believe is going to be about $5,000, because they charge anywhere from $80 to $100 a page. And then I have to hire a letterer for $3,100 to $4,000. So a letterer is a person, what they do is they create all the word balloons. They make sure all the word balloons and captions are placed in the right place. And that's somebody I would need to help finish the project. And I also need to hire a proofreader to look over everything overall. And I also have to pay for the printing and shipping costs. So all of those costs together, once I crunched all the numbers, is about $25,000. And I'm hoping that I can raise that much money with this Indiegogo, because that's one of the reasons why I'm doing an Indiegogo, is because I just don't have that kind of money to put together this kind of project. But I really love comics, and I really want to take the opportunity to go out here and try to give my readers an ISIS graphic novel, and go out here and give them a great story in a graphic novel. Because oftentimes I hear many people in Comicsgate, they constantly complain about what they call SJW comics, and they also complain about these SJW heroines. And over the last couple of live streams, I have talked about what it takes to write strong heroines, because I am a seasoned and experienced person in writing heroines. I've written heroines in books like your novels like your Spinsterella, and I've written them in both ISIS and E-Steam series books. So I have a lot of skill in writing a strong heroine. So when it comes down to me and writing heroines, this is something that is my area of expertise. And I believe I could show a solid model of what a good story featuring a heroine would look like. So with this graphic novel, everybody would have an example of what people would want to see as a heroine in a comic, what kind of story they would want to see with a heroine in a comic, and the type of story model that would, I believe, would be considered successful featuring a heroine in a comic. Because a lot of people in Comicsgate, again, they complain about books like your Unstoppable Wasp. They complain about books like your Captain Marvel. They complain about books like Squirrel Girl and Kamala Khan. And with the ISIS graphic novel, I want to go out here and give people that model for what everybody wants to see in a heroine. Because as I see it, everybody, again, complains, but you have to offer something that will provide a solution. So with this graphic novel, I'm coming to the table with something that I believe will be a solution to everybody's complaints, where they say, we want stories featuring strong heroines, but the whole thing is that I'm going to say, hey, I've got this model, I've got this story model that I've been using for the past 5 years on these ISIS series books. It's sold fairly well with your casual readers, and it's sold with the all ages crowd. And because it's sold well with the all ages crowd and the audiences that the industry desperately needs, this is why we need this model. So that's what I want to show with this ISIS Indiegogo, because I know there is a large audience of comic fans out there who want a story featuring a heroine, and they want a fun story featuring a heroine. And I've been giving my readers that on the platforms of Kindle and Smashwords for the past 5 years. And I want to give that story to comic readers in the comic medium as well. So I want to go out here and expand the platform with this ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo. And I want to reach those comic fans and show them that it's possible to give you a story featuring a strong heroine and make it fun as well. So that's what I want to do with this Indiegogo overall. And with this story, ISIS All That Glitters, there isn't going to be any sort of social justice narrative. There isn't going to be any sort of identity politics. And it's just going to be a good old-fashioned story featuring a heroine taking on the bad guys. And I believe that's what readers want, because a lot of readers say they want that good old school style 1980s, 1990s style superhero. And that's what I want to go out here and give my readers with this Indiegogo. So that's what I want to share with my readers, and that's what I want to give my readers with this Indiegogo. Now, this Indiegogo is going to go on for about 60 days. So this Indiegogo is going to end in May. So I'm hoping everybody comes out and pledges. I'm going to keep doing live streams where I continue to promote this Indiegogo because I want to see this project get funded, and I want to see this project become a full paperback, just like the ISIS All That Glitters prose paperback. I want to be able to hold it in my hand and share it with readers. And I want everybody to know that I have a consistent track record for going out here and producing and publishing work. As you've seen, you know, I've published all these books with Bill Walko's art on it, and I've published over 60 paperbacks and over 60 ebooks on platforms like Lightning Source, CreateSpace, and Smashwords. So I have a good understanding of the publishing industry, and I can get work out on the regular. So when it comes down to you getting a comic, it's going to happen if you back this Indiegogo and it gets funded. So you're going to get a comic out of the deal. But that's a guarantee from me because I have a track record of doing this. It's been consistent. I've been publishing print on demand for about 10 years now. The SJS Direct imprint just passed its 10th anniversary. So when it comes down to the Indiegogo, this may be a new project, new type of project, but as for publishing digitally, I'm well experienced in it, and I can get projects in and projects out because usually every year I do about 5 to 6 projects a year, and I believe I can get this Indiegogo out if I can get the funding. And that's the big challenge, is I'm trying to get the art and everything out so that paid for, so I can go do this project. That's what I want to do, is raise those funds so I can pay the project. Edward Gaines asked me if I could offset the cost by considering local art schools or deviant art, and I could bill it as an internship, but I don't want to do that. When it comes down to artists, I understand that their time is money, and I believe in paying artists for their labor. That's why I was working with Bill Walko for so many years. And whenever I would work with Bill, I would always try to make sure I had the funds ready to pay him, because in the comic book world, oftentimes a lot of creators, people will tell them, oh, you could do this work for us and we'll see if we can pay you later on. Because I've heard some horror stories about people who went out here and did 32, 33 pages of comics, and they never got paid a single dime for their work. And I don't want to rip off any artist out there, because when it comes down to their art, I believe I'm paying for their work, and that's not a Magneto in the background, I don't think. That's Scarlet Spider, Devin. But I believe in paying people for their time. I believe in paying people for their labor. And most importantly, I believe in making sure that I have the funds ready when it's time to go to work, because that's something I believe is something you do for your artist. And I've done that for Bill over the last 3-4 years working with him. But that's what I would do. That's what I do. I always try to make sure that that people are paid consistently. And every artist I have worked with, I have always made sure that they were paid and made sure that they got their money, because I know that artists have bills. I know artists, have costs, things that they work with, their supplies, all that stuff costs money. More importantly, their time is money. And that's why I want to make sure that I have the money ready, so that once I go out here and I get the money, once I get everything funded, then we can just go straight into production. And then from there, because I already priced out all the printing and everything, just go right into it and get these books out as fast as possible. That's what I usually do, because when I'm doing regular paperbacks and regular ebooks, that's what I do on the regular. So when it comes down to production, this is something that I'm very well versed in. So when it comes down to everybody getting a comic, I don't expect to see too many delays, because I know how to coordinate things, I know how to organize things. And when it comes down to Indiegogos, I have a little bit of experience in Kickstarters because I did a Kickstarter for Night of the Vampires, and once I got that funded, the people who paid for the books got all their books within less than a month after Bill finished the art. Once he finished the art, I got the covers out, and then we got those books as the rewards. So I have a consistent record for getting stuff out, with books and with getting out rewards and with getting out stuff, on the regular, because when I was on eBay for the last 3-4 years, I always made sure that people got their packages shipped quickly, and I always made sure things got out in an efficient manner. So everything as related to the Indiegogo is laid out and organized for everybody to get their rewards, and those rewards are going to be 2 rewards. So you have your choice between a paperback version of the ISIS All That Glitters graphic novel, and the graphic novel will be about comic book size or trade paper size, and that's what the paperback version will be. It'll be about trade paperback size, and that will be $25. Whereas the ebook version, which will be a digital version, that one is $15. So those are going to be the 2 rewards for the Indiegogo. So when it comes down to the Indiegogo, I want to make it as simple as possible. If we can meet the goals, I'll try to put on some stretch rewards. Maybe whatever you guys want. Would you like trading cards? Would you like variant covers? It depends on what you guys would want. And that's what I would offer everyone for this Indiegogo. Hi, Smiley Man. What's up? And Devin, thank you for the commentary on the ISIS and E-Steam art in the background. Those 2 pieces were done by Terry Beatty. He was the artist for Ms. Tree, and he is the current artist on Rex Morgan MD and the Phantom comic strip. So he did those 2 commissions for me, and those have been in my collection for a good, I say, 7 years now. Yeah, that's a Dr. Doom in the background. All those are Marvel Legends from my collection that my family members have given me. And I've been constantly, again, working on trying to get ISIS into a comic. And Terry Beatty was the first guy to ever draw ISIS and E-Steam in comic art. I got a commission from him back in 2012. And after 2014 was when I asked Bill Walker to do the first cover for, no, that was Night of the Vampires there, do the first cover for ISIS. And he was the second artist to draw ISIS, but as I consider, he's one of the best artists to draw the character. He really captures the spirit of the character, and that's one of the reasons why I want to see his art in the graphic novel I'm planning on this Indiegogo, because I really love his art. It's very bold. It's very dynamic. It reminds me a lot of old school Saturday morning cartoons, and that's what I want to give people in a graphic novel. I want to give them that bright, fun, high energy art that I believe would complement the kind of story that I have written in All That Glitters. So that's what I want to give everybody, and that's what I want to share with everyone with this Indiegogo. Now, this Indiegogo, I'm hoping to get it funded. I got one of the first people to pledge it just about 11 o'clock. Somebody pledged it when I launched it, and I'm going to be continuing to try to promote it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing a live stream today, is I want to see this project get funded. I want to see this comic come to life, and I want to go out here and get those readers into the ISIS character, because everybody talks about, strong women, and they talk about how they want these strong heroines. And I have been publishing and writing strong heroines for the last decade. So I've been writing heroines in books like your Spinsterella, which was an African American goth, and I have been writing Isis and Esteem stories for the last 5 years. So I have been writing strong heroines for many years, and I want to go out here and give readers on a larger platform an opportunity to see a strong heroine. Now, I hear all of these people, again, they complain about Captain Marvel and how Captain Marvel is so feminist. And that was the reason why I decided to launch this Indiegogo this week, because this is the week that your Captain Marvel is premiering at the theaters. And a lot of people are, yes, Miracle Mark, the Indiegogo is live now. And I put up a link in the early chat, but I'll put up another one if I can, because YouTube is weird and they tend to, but it is up now. I put the link there right now. And this is, everybody complains about Captain Marvel. They complain that the story is so feminist. And with the Isis All That Glitters, I'm going to give you a story that has no identity politics and is just a good old-fashioned superhero story. And when I look at it, again, Captain Marvel, you can't say that Captain Marvel is bad and then somebody has to offer an alternative. And I'm the guy who wants to offer that alternative. And I want to show you how you can make a superheroine fun. So that's one of the things I had. That's why I launched it this week, because Captain Marvel is coming out. Everybody has complained about Captain Marvel. They've complained about how bad the story is. And yes, I watched the trailers for Captain Marvel, and it is absolutely terrible. Thank you, Neil Star, for sharing it on Facebook and Twitter. That's something I desperately need. I need to get as much word out about this Indiegogo because I want more people to know about it. And I want them to know that instead of them spending money on a film like Captain Marvel that they hate, they have an alternative they can pick up, which is the Isis graphic novel Indiegogo. So you have an alternative and you have an alternative story you can pick up. So that's why I did this graphic novel. And I've been working on this graphic novel ever since I finished the original prose version of Isis All That Glitters, which was back in early 2018. So right after I finished the prose version of All That Glitters, I got right to work on the script version. And that was a major challenge because when it came down to the prose version, it's one style of writing, and in the comic book, it's a completely different set of writing. Now, comic book writing is very different because you have to concentrate a lot of story into single images. And as you're concentrating your story into single images, then you have to make those images move from panel to panel. So that was something that I learned over time how to do as I was writing out the stories for the covers of books like Your Bride of Dracula. I learned how to write the storyboards for this book and many other books in the Isis series like Escape from Transylvania. I had to learn how to make the story move in a single image and make those images dynamic. That's a major challenge because it's very different than a prose story where the paragraphs move the story. So that's something I had to learn over time, and I believe that I got enough of a good grasp of it over time. Miracle Mark, I don't have any pictures of the art just yet, but this is the art. The art on the cover is the art that's going to be in the book because Bill Walko did the art for the cover, but he's also doing the interior. And so you're going to get the exact same art you see on this cover inside of the comic. So that everything in the comic is going to be consistent if we can get it funded. If we can get it funded, you're going to get everything that you see here. This art you see on this cover, that's going to be on every panel in the comic. So I believe in, again, giving you consistency when it relates to comics. And I want to be able to, when you pick up a comic and you look at the cover, I want you to go out here and make sure that what's on the cover is in the comic, because I believe if you're going to pay money for this, you should get the value for that money. I'm not that great of an artist, Ghost Skittle. I'm absolutely terrible. I mean, the art I do is just basic concept stuff, and I do that kind of stuff so the artist, like this Dark Succubus, this art is not something you would want to put in a cover. And I know what happened to me was a lot of my art wound up on lousy book covers list, because I originally did the cover for The Temptation of John Haynes, and it wound up on a lousy book cover list. And I'm going to get ready to refresh this cover. It's in a couple of months. It depends on what Mike Williams' schedule is. I want to hire him to refresh this cover. And the cover for Isis the Beauty Myth, this cover, not this cover, the one I put on there was even worse than this. And that one, again, got attacked. And that was one of the reasons why I started hiring artists like Bill Walko and Mike Williams and Drew Swift to design my covers, was because I understood that the cover was the first impression readers got of the story, and I wanted to leave a powerful first impression on the readers. Thank you, Edic. Bill Walko is a great artist, and a lot of people have been comparing him to Bruce Timm, who did Batman animated and Superman animated, and Bill's style is reminiscent of a lot of animation. He gets a lot of inspiration from 80s animated cartoons, and that's what I want for the Isis graphic novel. I want a really animated style, and I believe that's going to be very good for the all ages, family friendly aspects of the book, is that having that all ages, that animated style, because that type of style, I believe, is going to move very well in a comic, and it's going to be very visually strong for readers of all ages. So that's what I'm going for with the Isis All That Glitters graphic novel, is I want to make this as accessible to as all ages as possible, because when it comes down to most comics today, they aren't that accessible to all ages. So yeah, Bill gets a lot of inspiration from Hanna-Barbera, Bruce Timm, and many other animators in his art style. And that's something that I love about his art, is that he draws from animation, old school Hanna-Barbera, old school Filmation, old school Bruce Timm, and all of that goes into his style. And that's why I want to see his art in a comic, because I know that he's got a very strong style, and it would go great in a graphic novel. And I would love to see that be made into a full book. That's what I'm working on. Who do I see in terms of Isis as an actress? A long time ago, I used to see Halle Berry as Isis, but these days it's up in the air. Whenever I write the character, I always hear Tia Mowry's voice these days when I'm writing Isis's narration. So whenever I'm doing Isis now, it's a toss-up. Usually when I'm doing the narration, she sounds just like Tia Mowry, but back in the day, it used to be I had Halle Berry as Isis, and if she was going to go up against Sally Richardson's E-Team. That was the original plan, and Angela Bassett was going to be Queen Isis, and Samuel L. Jackson was going to be Osiris. And I also had Shamar Moore as Horus, and Michael Clark Duncan was Anubis. So I had this all-black cast originally planned for Isis whenever I would imagine it, and that was the original plan with the character. I was going to do Egyptian gods in the future, but they were going to be these black Egyptian gods, when it was going to span all of these different black actors and actresses, and that was the original plan. So when it Ghost Gizzle, Michael Clark Duncan was one of the great actors out there. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted him to play Anubis, because he was like a gentle giant. And my version of Anubis was going to be this gentle giant type character. He's going to be big and dark and imposing, but he was really kind and friendly. Edek, thank you. I came up with that casting after watching years of watching different performances and different skill sets. So I wanted to get this black cast together to play the Egyptian gods. And that was the original plan. Again, it was going to be Halle Berry as Isis, Angela Bassett as Queen Isis, Samuel L. Jackson as Osiris, Michael Clark Duncan as Anubis, Shamar Moore as Horus, and I had a whole bunch of people as different gods, and Sally Richardson was supposed to play Eastine, and Keith David was Lucifer. So everything was going to be this all-black cast. Devon Williams asked me, who would I pick to play John Haynes? Right now, it's just Michael Ealy, because Michael Ealy is one of the best underrated actors out there, and I believe he could play a lot of the human characters very well. And I believe that Michael Ealy has a good range of emotion, and I believe he could play the multidimensionality of a John Haynes based on the experiences from what I've seen in his fantasy work in Almost Human, because Almost Human really, it sold me. I mean, the first thing that made me think of him as John Haynes was his performance in Their Eyes Were Watching God. I remember watching Their Eyes Were Watching God, and I looked at Michael Ealy, and I immediately thought that was John Haynes. But then what sold me was Almost Human. Edward Gaines says that Keith David as Lucifer would not be Tales from the Hood. I originally came up with that way back in 2002, 2003. I originally came up with the whole Keith David as Lucifer back then, because I originally remember him and Sally Richardson playing so well in Gargoyles, and I wanted to try to flip it up because Keith and Sally played they played Elisa and Goliath, and they were playing lovers, but I wanted to play more of an adversarial relationship between the two characters. So I wanted to flip it around and show that what would happen if we took, Sally Richardson, who was a great actress, and show that she could play this different style of range, and it would show some range as related to her acting ability. So I always imagined it as flipping things around, and that's what I did in Temptation of John Haynes and The Politics of Hell, where I introduced Lucifer. That was the original plan for that. So it wasn't Tales from the Hood. I mean, Tales from the Hood, visually showed me what a Keith David as Lucifer would work. And it would work, but the whole thing is that Rusty Cundiff couldn't write a decent devil to save his life. Keith David as Lucifer works beautifully. I mean, Keith was taking that material to a higher level, but when it came down at the end of the day, Rusty Cundiff's campy, schlocky, silly script is what undermined the whole Tales from the Hood movie. I mean, one of the reasons why I roasted the movie was because it took a great concept and messed it up. Do I see any television networks supporting my novel? The only way you can get a television, I would love to see it done on Netflix. I don't really want to deal with the TV networks, because the TV networks, they would just destroy everything. They would inject all this gynocentrism. They would inject all this feminism and identity politics. But if I were to do, ISIS or Eastine, it would be on an independent platform, maybe something like Netflix, where I could try to stay true to the source material. But that's a long, long way from now, because right now, all I'm trying to do is get the graphic novel funded so that people can see how this story can work on the medium of comics. But as it relates to television, they would butcher a concept like ISIS, because the whole idea of us showing a black woman being a goddess, that flies in the face of white supremacy, where they want to show you gods and goddesses, the pinnacle of womanhood, as a white woman. So they don't like the idea of you showing black gods and black goddesses. That's something that it would not be able to put on a mainstream platform. It's something I would love to do, but I know it cannot be done on a mainstream platform because it just does not fit the narrative of mainstream media. But I would love to do it But I would love to do it. I have never heard of Nonso and Nancy Cayman, but maybe I could use, maybe I would use him for Anubis right now because Michael Duncan has passed away a while ago. But again, originally I had Michael Clark Duncan. He was the guy I wanted for Anubis, but I would be open if I ever got the chance to do it to casting other people. I probably would have to cast other people because everybody I originally cast in my imagination, everybody is fairly old right now. I mean, Halle Berry is 52, Samuel Jackson is 70s, Shamar Moore is in his 50s. So I would probably have to cast in a whole new group of actors if it ever got that far. So at this point, I'm just focused, as I said again, on the comic book, and I'm focused on getting the comic book out there because no, it's Sally Richardson. She played Elisa in Gargoyles Ghost Skittle way back about 20 years ago in the Gargoyles cartoon, and she has starred in numerous black movies like Black Dynamite. She was in Black Dynamite. She was in I Will Follow, and she was in for all of you old guys out here, Low Down Dirty Shame, and she was in Great White Hype. And she is an extremely attractive woman. That's one of the reasons why I chose her for E-Steam, because she has a sultriness and a presence that is very strong. And she's also a very solid actress who has a very great range. She was also in Eureka, and she's directing right now. I've seen a lot of the work she did. She did the 4th episode of Luke Cage. She directed the one with Bushmaster beat up Luke Cage. And that one had a lot of Burton vibes to it. When the stuff she directs is so good that I wonder what she could do if we gave her a whole feature film. Because if you look at her work, Sally Richardson's work, is the director, it's top notch. And yeah, she was in Posse, and she did an amazing job on that episode where Luke Cage got beat up by Bushmaster. I mean, the visuals on that film, on that episode, were amazing. The acting was top notch, and I believe that she got nominated for NAACP Image Award for that one, but she should have got an Emmy for that one because that one episode was one of the best episodes of Luke Cage I ever saw. I mean, the whole season 2 was top notch, but that episode, if you watch that one, you just see all the little nuances and stuff, and it takes it to another level. But she was the inspiration for E-Steam, and one of the reasons why she was the inspiration for E-Steam was because I thought of how strong her range was, and I originally said to myself, this actress has such a great range, she would make for a great villain, just like Ursula in Little Mermaid and Cruella de Vil and many of the great Disney villains. And I always thought that she would be someone who could play one of those great Disney villains. I thought she'd be great to be an antagonist to the Isis character. I have Black Dynamite on DVD, E-Deck, and I've watched it multiple times. And that's a great film. If you watch Black Dynamite, you will see Sally's range as a comedian and as a solid actress. So she's done drama and comedy. And Black Dynamite was one of the best films I ever saw. It's a film that really did a great job of satirizing the blaxploitation films, and it did a great job overall with the cinematography, the acting. I mean, to say that film only cost $3 million, it looked far better. Ghost Skittle, I'm no fan of the live-action Disney remakes. No live-action Disney anything. For me, Disney should not be making live-action versions of their animated movies. They should just make animated movies. And one of the things that I wish they would have continued making was hand-drawn animation, because when it comes down to Japan, the anime is still doing hand-drawn animation, but America, we're too scared to do that. And I believe that, in the 90s, we were making some good strides towards making animation on the level of manga, but not manga and anime. And we just stopped in the middle because Disney got scared and they started making crap like Home on the Range. And then they had movies like Titan AE flop. But we could have taken American animation in that direction. So that's something that I think we really missed the boat on, because American hand-drawn animation, I think, could have survived another 20 years if they had gone out here. Oh, Don Bluth is teaching, but yeah, he was a top-notch animator back in the 70s, and he did take risks. And that's one of the things I liked about Don Bluth, is he used to take risks with stuff like, and do harder content like American Tail and Anastasia. He tried to do a little bit harder and more adult themed content. And that was one of the great things about 90s animation, was they were trying to do more adult themes, and they were trying to go in the same direction as anime. But what happened was these studios and American audiences just couldn't handle it. And after Toy Story, we started getting the dumbed down stuff again. Meanwhile, films like Atlantis and Titan AE, they weren't that, the stories fell apart a bit, and that was a big problem. But I really wish they could have continued on the road that they were going, because it was a good road. Because I remember watching things like Gargoyles, and that was a step in the right direction. Batman the Animated Series was a good step in the right direction. And Batman Beyond was a huge, great step in the right direction. I mean, Batman Beyond, that was one of the things that gave me the influence and inspiration for ISIS. Because as I was watching Batman Beyond, I thought about the whole idea of Egyptian gods in the future. And it gave me a lot of ideas for many of the designs for ISIS, and it gave me a lot of ideas for things as related to the ISIS character. I mean, even her own symbol comes from, partially, my ideas from seeing Batman Beyond. Yeah, I saw how many sequels they did with Land Before Time, but the problem was that Don Bluth never really pushed the envelope enough on that. I mean, yeah, they ran it into the ground, Edward Gaines. They ran Land Before Time in the ground, but they were taking risks. And that was one of the things I like seeing about hand-drawn animation, is that they used to take a lot of risks in the 90s. And then they just stopped. And then we got Home on the Range, which was like a huge step back for animation, because that movie was so dumbed down and ridiculous that it literally destroyed the entire Disney hand-drawn division. And after that, we just started getting these CGI flicks, but I wish they had did more hand-drawn. The last thing we got from Disney was Princess and the Frog, and that wasn't, again, it wasn't really a good film. It was just, the story was kind of weak, and that was something that could have been more, but the Princess and the Frog just didn't push it the way it should have pushed it. I mean, I have my issues with Princess and the Frog, and I've talked about it on numerous occasions about, you know, Tiana not being descended from royalty, and your Tiana just having this non-black prince. So we have this black princess, but the story is just not on the level of the other stories. And I believe that's one of the things that impeded your Princess and the Frog from being successful at the box office. Now, when I was writing Easting the Sands of Time, I went out of my way to try to correct a lot of the problems that I saw in Princess and the Frog. And one of the things I wanted to do first was give you that black on black love story. So the first thing I did was I gave you the black on black love story, because I knew that if you're going to do a black princess, you need to have that black on black love, because that's how you're going to get the core audience for that type of story. Then I came in and I gave the princess Easting. I came and brought her from ancient Egypt, because when you have a princess who's descended from two royal bloodlines, because Easting is a princess of Keisha and she's the adopted daughter of Osiris. So you now have a princess who comes from a royal bloodline, and you have a story of a princess in a romance. And with it being a little time travel, I can add in things like some sci-fi elements, and I can make it fun and exciting, because I'm not only teaching about ancient Egyptian history, but I'm coming in with a little bit of time travel romance. And those are the things that I believe would have led to a stronger story and brought in more of an audience. And I believe it would have been a stronger story, because when I looked at Princess and the Frog, it just wasn't really, it didn't really work well. So that's when I was writing Easting the Sands of Time. I wanted to do a story where you could see a black princess, and you could see her in a kind of story that was kind of lighthearted, kind of fun, and focused on things that were more in tune with the other Disney princesses. Because when you look at Tiana's story, it's just not in line with theirs. But when I did Easting the Sands of Time, I wanted to make sure that the princess story was in tune with the other princesses, so that when black girls had looked at their princess, it was on the same level as the other princesses. So that's what I wanted to do with Sands of Time, is I wanted to give you that heroine who was out here and put her in a princess story. And Edek asks, am I frustrated by all of what I see coming out of Hollywood? Not really, because this is par for the course with Hollywood, because I understand with Hollywood, they are pushing a certain narrative in their material. And if I don't like what they're pushing in their stuff, all I can do is tune it out. Or like I do right now with the SJS Direct Imprint, I can go out here and make my own material, which is what I'm trying to do with the ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo, is go out here and create my own material, because I believe that if instead of sitting there and complaining about Hollywood stuff and spending more money on it, what you have to do is go out here and make your own material, because that's the only way you're going to facilitate any change. Because when it comes down to Hollywood and things like these black men in dresses, these masculine and acting black women, these social justice victimization narratives, and these effeminization narratives, the only way to combat them is to not support them, and then support alternative media like what I'm producing on the SJS Direct Imprint, because that's the only way you're going to be able to make any sort of gains overall. So instead of me getting mad about Hollywood, I accept that Hollywood is what it is, and then move on and then create my own stuff. Well, there's not much we can do about Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is a comedy actor. So yes, he's going to be a goofball, but that's just who he is. So if I want to do comedy, I have to go out here and create an alternative to that comedy. So whenever I write comedy, I can do comedy without being a goofball. I've written many comical scripts, and I put many comedy sequences in books, like Temptation of John Haynes has a lot of comedy in it. And what I would do is, again, make my own stuff. So if Kevin Hart's a goofball, he can be a goofball. But if I want to give people a different type of laugh, I can give people a different type of laugh by creating my own material. And that's something else I do in the ISIS All That Glitters graphic novel, is I show you that it's possible for a black woman to be funny and not have to go out here and, degrade themselves. Because inside of this graphic novel, I also put a lot of humor in there, because in comic books today, everything is so serious these days that it's hard for the reader to actually enjoy the book. And this is a big problem with most comics, as I see it, is everything is so serious, and it's just so dreary and depressing that you don't have an escape. And as I see it, a good comic book should enable the reader to escape for 30, 45 minutes, get that break from their life, and then go back out here and experience their own life. So people aren't getting that escape. And that's one of the things that's really frustrating about a lot of today's comics that I wanted to also address in this ISIS graphic novel that I'm raising funds for on the Indiegogo. Is I wanted to be able to give you action and adventure, but I also wanted to give you that humor in there, because, excuse me, we really don't get a chance where heroes have these moments where we can laugh. Excuse me. Ghost Skill asks me, Do I think Disney is really thinking about shutting down Marvel Comics and focusing on other platforms? I think that this might possibly be a long-term plan for Disney. What they're going to do is, I see it as a shutdown, as from my years of publishing experience, is what they're going to do is they're going to fold your Marvel Comics into one of their other publishing houses, and they're going to lay off a lot of these editors and a lot of these smaller people. A lot of writers and a lot of artists are going to lose their jobs. And as they fold it into the platform, we're going to see a complete change in the mission of Marvel and a complete difference in content. That's what I see is coming to Marvel Comics, because at this point, they are just not sustainable as a publishing house. They're just not getting the sales. And I believe Marvel is going to get folded into one of their other imprints, and it's going to be, you know, either Touchstone Books or something like that. Marvel's going to be a part of Touchstone Books, and the Touchstone editorial people are going to take over as the editors-in-chief at Marvel. And I believe people like your Tom Brevoort, your CB, they're all going to get terminated or they're going to get demoted. And Marvel's going to be folded in, and they're going to be forced to go to the house standards of a Touchstone Books or Miramax Books. They're going to be put under that standard, and we're going to get a lot less comics from there on in. So we might just wind up getting, instead of us getting like the hundreds of books we're getting now, we may only get maybe 18, 20 titles from Marvel being folded in to a Touchstone or a Miramax or, you know, Disney Publications. It may, once it gets folded in, they are going to lay off a lot of workers, and we're going to see a lot of artists, you know, really suffering, because when you have a company that's publishing over 100 books and it starts to scale back to 20, 25, there's going to be a lot of people looking for work. I see the same thing happening on the DC side as well, because you've heard your Dan Dido talking about, oh, it's not that going to be that bad, but it is going to be that bad, because right now you have too many books chasing too few readers, and you're not chasing any casual readers, because a lot of these books, they're only sold in places like comic shops. So the books they're not, the audience that is there is not buying the books, and the casuals aren't buying the books. So what I see is a really pared down industry, and I said it should have been pared down years ago. We only need like 20, 21 titles on either side overall, because that's how you sell comics. You want to sell with a tight catalog. Like right now with the SJS Direct imprint, I have a very tight catalog. Usually I have like an ISIS series book, an E-Steam series book, and these days a John Haynes series book. But I usually keep my catalog tight to maybe 3-5 new books a year, and I have everything on the backlist. So whatever's out there, I want it to be the best it can be. And when you have a tight catalog, you can focus on promoting those books that are selling. I'm trying to. Devon asks, the Telecommunications Act was a failure. Yeah, I would say it was a failure because it destroyed competition. When Bill Clinton and the Republican Congress signed the telecommunications bill, it consolidated media. And when they consolidated media, it didn't give people an incentive to go out here and be creative, because no one was competing with each other. And what happened after that was people wound up going and creating new platforms on the internet. And now you have the mainstream media trying to take over those platforms. And that's failing because people just migrate from one platform to the next. So, for example, you might have corporations that try to go after Facebook and YouTube. And then what will happen is people will just move on to Minds.com and places like Black Avenger and places like your Vimeo, because people want to create their content. And now that you've given people the power to create their own content, now they are creating their own platforms, and they're going out here and creating their own because they look at these mainstream platforms and they don't see their stories being told. Like when we look at this Captain Marvel debacle, here we have this story talking about strong women. We have this identity politics. We have this feminism. And the readers are not seeing themselves in this movie. All they're seeing is this girl power agenda, and that's not what the customers want. The people who built the MCU, they want a story that reflects what they want. They want to see these comic books come to life, and we have Marvel trying to push this identity politics agenda with this Captain Marvel and this Brie Larson, and that's just alienating a lot of people, and that's why the film is generating a lot of controversy. But I believe at the end of the day, it's just not going to generate enough sales to make it appealing. So that's one of the things that really frustrates people about this whole Captain Marvel movie. People are just, they don't want to see the MCU turned into an identity politics platform. They came here for action and adventure. They did not come here to be preached to. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I'm launching this Indiegogo, is because I understand what I believe readers want in a heroine. I believe they just want a fun action and adventure story. They want, again, that action. They want that adventure. They want those laughs. And they don't want to sit there and be preached to. They want to have fun. They want to escape. And they want to get away from their problems. And this is a big problem that your people in media have. They want to push these agendas. And that's, again, all part of this whole consolidation of media and these legacy media. They want to be able to program you to believe what they want you to believe. But in an age where we have print-on-demand books and YouTube and people creating their own media, you can't tell people what they like or what they should like, nor can you program people to believe what you want them to believe. So I look at it and I say to myself, you know, what they're trying to do with Captain Marvel, you know, she just is very disrespectful to everyone, because all that time, you know, all these heroes spent their time building up this platform, and all these men built up this platform, and they want to bring in this Mary Sue character who has not earned anything, has not paid any dues. She's just going to show up, like Neostar is saying, and insist she's the best. And that's a real slap in the face to all of those heroes like Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and the Hulk, who have earned their way, and even more of a slap in the face to heroines like Black Widow and Scarlet Witch, who have been paying dues since day one. All those women have been paying dues, and we get two of them, the Wasp and your Scarlet Witch, they get turned into dust. And that's a real insult to those heroes who are out here putting in that work. They're going to go and end them and then say, oh, Captain Marvel's going to come in and save everybody. That's just a middle finger at everyone. And it really puts the MCU in a tight spot. As I've said in previous videos, you know, the MCU is in a lot of trouble, and Kevin Feige is in a lot of trouble because he doesn't see how he's alienating so many people with this Captain Marvel. It just really rubs people the wrong way. You invest 10 years of your life in watching these films, and here you have them coming in with this feminist savior who's supposed to come in and beat up Thanos. And that's a middle finger, again, up at all of those fans who invested their money and their time into this franchise. And this woman cannot even prove that she can sell her own comic. And that's one of the things that's really sad about this. You're going to try to elevate this character who has had multiple books fail, has had multiple reboots, and that the audience just doesn't like. And you're going to continue to try to force this character on people. At least when I'm doing ISIS, there is an audience out there. And the great irony is that the feminists were the ones who were after me when I first started putting out the ISIS series. When I first started publishing the ISIS series, it was the feminists who were mad at me, talking about, you know, you're using this papyrus font, you're going out here and you've got these lousy book covers. They were the ones throwing fire at me and throwing shade at me. And that was because the ISIS series did not fit within their narrative as related to identity politics. And it did not push this whole Black feminist narrative. Now, I was showing, when I do ISIS stories, I show you a woman being strong, but I show you her being strong from her internal character traits, and I show her strength of character in ISIS series stories. And that's one of the things that resonates with readers, is seeing how strong the ISIS character is, because after the fight she has with Golden Shine in the first 10 pages, later on in the story, we start to see how strong the ISIS character is, because she dedicates herself, even after losing that fight to Golden Shine, she dedicates to stopping her because she understands she has a responsibility to others. And that takes a lot of strength of character to do. And that's something that I want to share with readers, is that, you know, what really makes a woman strong is what's inside of her core values and her discipline and her willingness to stand up for what she believes in and do what is right. And that's something I didn't see reading many of these so-called SJW comics, like your Squirrel Girl, your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, your Unstoppable Wasp, or your Captain Marvel. Now, I remember reading Unstoppable Wasp's newest recent 2 issues, where she runs into the same issue that Isis ran into with Golden Shine, where she lost a fight. And your so-called Unstoppable Wasp, what she does is she falls completely apart in the face of adversity. She literally beats up all of her friends and goes to hide in her secret lab inside of her necklace. And that's not an example of being a heroine as I see it. For me, being a heroine, again, is having the character, instead of you falling apart and trying to figure out what went wrong, is you trying to understand that, you know, bad things happen and you just can't fall apart. You have to build your resolve and continue persevering. And that was something I didn't see in those 2 Unstoppable Wasp issues, where they copped out and then said, oh, she's got schizophrenia or something, like, not schizophrenia, she's got bipolar disorder. And I saw that as a complete cop-out. It just showed, you know, how weak a writer Jeremy Whitley was, because instead of him showing that this character, even in the face of a loss, you know, can move on and live up to the moniker on her book, which is so-called Unstoppable Wasp, instead, she just stops, falls apart, completely collapses over the course of 2 issues. Whereas in Isis All That Glitters, I show you that the Isis character, you know, after she's beaten by Golden Shine, within 2 pages, starts to rebuild her resolve to go out here and continue fighting the good fight and protecting those who need protection. So instead of me showing you a victim like Unstoppable Wasp, inside of All That Glitters, I show you what makes Isis a hero, and that is continuing to stand even after you fall down. And as I stated in one of my books, The Thetas, what makes a lady is not how she falls down, it's how she gets back up. And that's what I show in the All That Glitters story, and that's what I'm going to show in the Isis All That Glitters graphic novel. You're going to see an example of a strong heroine, because as I see it, what makes a heroine is not her being this so-called powerful woman with great powers. It is who she is on the inside, because as I see it, the superpowers a character has is just an external aspect of who they are on the inside. And it's who they are on the inside that makes their ability to use their powers the thing that's compelling to readers, because we have to see who they are on the inside. And that's something I want to show in this graphic novel. And it's something that is in the story All That Glitters, the prose version, which is right now available in paperback. So if you want to see the whole story, you can pick up the paperback version right now. But I want to get the comic version out here so that you can see in the industry what a strong heroine looks like in a comic book. I want to show that, you know, that you're not, what makes a hero is that they don't sit there and be a victim, but they learn their lessons and then they grow and move on from there. Because like Devin says, when it comes down to the SJW, they have the biggest victim mentality in the room, and they play this blame and shame game whenever they face a challenge. Instead of them, digging their heels and getting up, when it comes down to the SJW, they come out here playing the victim. It's always somebody else's fault. Or, excuse me, they start making excuses like in Unstoppable Wasp's case, oh, she's got bipolar disorder. That's not what a hero does. A hero doesn't make excuses. They always try to find a way to overcome in the face of adversity and in the face of whatever challenge they're facing. So whenever I think of a heroine, I think of a heroine as somebody, again, who understands that, yes, they have faults, but they still work to overcome their faults. Because as a kid, when I had over the years, I've had people tell me that I was slow and all this stuff. And I would always say to myself, no, that's not who I am. I'm going to show you who I am. And that's what a hero does. A hero goes out here and they don't let other people define them. They define themselves, and they have the character to keep standing, even though everybody is telling them not to stand. So that's, to me, is what a hero is. And we're not, as I see it, not seeing it in many of these so-called SJW comics, where they're supposed to be talking about these super heroines and how they want to push the idea of a strong woman, but we don't get to see them actually being strong. Instead, we get to see them crumple up in the face of pressure, and then they just fall completely apart. And that's not what strong women, as I see it, do, because I don't see that type of woman in my family, and I don't see that type of woman in my community. When I write ISIS series stories, I oftentimes, again, draw from experiences from women in my family, women in my community, and that's where I get the whole foundation for the whole strength of character that I apply in many of my stories that feature heroines. So I don't really push any sort of victimology or victimization, because that's not the Black women I grew up with. That's not the Black women I live with. And that's not the Black women that are in my neighborhood that I've known or in my community. So when I look at these stories that they try to push, they kind of, when I read them, they really irk me. Like when I was looking at that whole Naomi story, which was all exposition and never all setup and no payoff. It just, yes, you had a Black character, but she had no character as related to her internals. When I write Isis, I want you to see those internal character traits, because that's what I believe really shows you how she's a heroine. That's where I get a lot of my ideas for heroines, Edward. I get them from people that I know, and I get them from people in my community. Now, that's where I get all the traits for the heroines that I write. And I take those traits that I get from people I know, and then I draw inspiration from actors and actresses, and I use that for creating my heroines. And that's one of the things I want to give readers with this Indiegogo is, again, I want to give you that great story that features a strong heroine. I want to be able to show you that heroine who is Black, and I want to show you a positive image of a heroine out there, because when I look at who they're presenting to me, the Naomis, the Riri Williams, I don't see, the Black women in my community. I don't see the Black women in my neighborhood, and I don't see them presented in comics. And one of the reasons why I believe I don't see those women is because I don't believe people like your Brian Michael Bendis have ever really experienced, Black women. I don't think he understands it the way I would understand it, because when I write Isis and Esteem, it comes from my experiences interacting with Black women. And I have really positive interactions with a lot of sisters out there. And a lot of sisters have gone out here and bought my Isis series books, my Esteem series books, and they enjoy those books. And I would hope that many comic fans would enjoy them as well, because that's what I want to do. I want to share that with you guys on the Indiegogo, and I want to be able to give people, again, that positive image of Black women, because when I created Isis back in the day, it was because my family members and I, we were sitting at the table and we were talking about how there weren't that many Black women in comics. And I sat there, I said to myself, yeah, there aren't that many Black women in comics. Outside of Storm, and Vixen, there aren't, and your Monica Rambeau, there's only about 3, maybe 4, 5 with Misty Knight, Black heroines out there. And a lot of times they really don't get the spotlight on them, and they're not really placed in a lead character role. Whereas here at SJS Direct, I have 2 books featuring Black heroines. I have Isis and Eastine. And again, I've been writing those stories for 5 years now. And a lot of people who have picked up my Isis series books have learned a lot about Black heroines. And they've seen that you can write a great story featuring a Black heroine, and you can write a fun story featuring a Black heroine. And you don't have to feature all the identity politics, nor do you have to push any sort of victimization narrative down people's throats. So when I write heroines, I can write fun, entertaining stories, or I can write hard-hitting dramas like when I did with Eastine Ascension, or I can write a mystery like Isis All About the Goddess. So I can write a range of stories featuring a Black heroine, make it compelling, make it entertaining, and make it fun. And what I want to do, again, with this graphic novel Indiegogo, is show that you can do this in a comic, and you can do it in a way that is all ages entertainment. Now, that's another thing, again, I want to do, is get back to an all ages entertainment with my storytelling. And that's something that I want to do, is get back to that, because I believe that it's possible to make a Black heroine, make her fun and accessible for all ages, and get a heroine out there that little Black girls can get behind. And because when it comes down to Isis, Black girls like her, white girls like her, and even, what's even crazier, people like Eastine even more. So both of those heroines, they have whenever I show the stories, people love them. So I know it's possible to go out here and make that type of story. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I'm doing this graphic novel, is I want to go out here and give that type of story. And I'm reading some of them. Yeah, Neostar is talking about how in our solo issue, she was a glorified dilettante, but I saw her as even worse. She was just so selfish and narcissistic. It's just hard to like Nadia Pym. And then she's just not relatable. That's one of the things I didn't like about the character, was she was just not relatable. She was just not like any teenager I ever knew. And I knew a lot of smart girls. And she just came across as just such a narcissist. And everything was about her. She was talking about how she was doing things with this Genius and Action Research Labs, but it wasn't about the other people. She was just about herself. Neostar is talking about how, yeah, the Black heroines are few and far between. And that's something I've been working on for the last decade or so, trying to create that strong heroine, Black heroine. That's something I've been trying to work on, because when it comes down to Black heroines, we don't get that many of them. And the ones we do get, they're just underdeveloped. They really don't get to do much. I mean, Storm, outside of being in the X-Men, we really don't get to see her. She's not strong. She hasn't carried her own book that well. Vixen, they try to get her out here as a lead character, but she doesn't carry a book that well. And Rocket, they turned her into a single mother, and that really annoyed me. Livewire has the personality of cardboard over at Valiant. But when I do Isis and Eastine, I wanted to make characters who could be lead characters. And a lead character is one who can carry her own stories from beginning to end. They have relationships with people in their community. They have a rogues gallery all their own, and they have struggles and challenges. So that's something I wanted to show in the Isis series, and it's something I show in Isis All That Glitters. Golden Shine is an Isis villain, and she's a part of her rogues gallery. So Isis has a fairly decent-sized rogues gallery over the last 15 books. that I've done with the character. So she has her own rogues gallery, and Golden Shine is the newest addition to that rogues gallery. East Team has her own rogues gallery as well, with characters like Delilah, Brimstone Jack, and many other bad guys Lucifer. So she has a rogues gallery, and the Beast from the Buttra, the Beast from the Baal. So each character has their own rogues gallery, and they have their own series of challenges to overcome. Yeah, Kamala Khan and Nadia Pym, they are both narcissists. It's all about them, and it's never about the people. And that's something that's very different from Isis and East Team, who are all about serving people and all about looking out for others. And that's what makes them very relatable to readers who have gone out to pick up Isis and East Team series books. Yeah, that was X-Men 200, I believe, or 201, Edward Gaines, where Storm beat Cyclops for the leadership role. But that book was part of the Claremont run, where she did beat Cyclops in a fight. And then Cyclops went on to form X-Factor with the original X-Men. And yes, Storm has been the leader of the X-Men, but she has never been a lead character. So the big problem with Storm is she has not ever carried her own book. She's done minis, but she's never had that rogues gallery. She's never been that lead character who has carried her own books or carried her own stories. Same thing with Vixen, same thing with Rocket. They just never really gave us that story that featured a Black woman who carried her own books. Now with Isis and East Team, we see Black women carrying their own books and carrying their own stories. And that's something that we need to see. Roth 1381 says, tell a Black story, love story so well that it ignites a flame in people. Well, I've done that already. I've done Black on Black love stories. I did Temptation of John Haynes. This is a very powerful Black on Black love story. And Spinsterella is a powerful Black on Black love story. And East Team, The Sands of Time is a Black on Black love story. So I've done multiple Black on Black love stories, and people have picked them up and enjoyed them. So when it comes down to Black on Black love stories, that's something that I do on the regular. And I would love to do that as a comic. If you guys would love to see that as a comic, I would love to go out here and do that. I would love to give you guys another Black on Black love story. So a lot of stories I do are Black on Black love stories. The first book I published back in 2008, A Recipe for Success, that was a Black on Black love story. So that's something I incorporate in all my work. I mean, just in 2017, I did East Team, The Sands of Time. And this was, again, inspired by Disney princesses. And this is a Black on Black love story. So that's something I do on the regular. Oh, Neil Star. Yeah, I hate what they did to She-Hulk. That was Alana Smith. Alana Smith just transposed herself onto the She-Hulk. And that's why we don't see the fun, vivacious She-Hulk we used to see back from the days of the Byrne run. Now, back in the days of the Byrne run, John Byrne took She-Hulk and he took her from this, angry, brooding monster, and he turned her into this fun, vivacious character. And that's something that is really sad that they did, because Alana Smith wants to make herself an avatar in the Marvel Universe, and she wants to take the She-Hulk and turn herself into a version of Alana Smith. Now, what's funny? A lot of people, when they read my East Team series stories, they say it reminds them a lot of the old John Byrne She-Hulk. So if you want to see the old school She-Hulk, one of the fun ways you can go see it these days is to just pick up one of my East Team series stories, because a lot of people who have read old East Team books like Witches of Eastland or Little Girl Lost or East Team Ascension or the upcoming East Team Goddess of, they all tell me that East Team reminds them a lot of old school She-Hulk. So if you like old school She-Hulk, you definitely want to pick up all the East Team series books, because a lot of her adventures have a lot of that action adventure and a lot of the humor that made the She-Hulk series from John Byrne so much fun to read. And when you read the East Team stories, they're just a lot of fun to read overall. Yeah, I really hated that whole Tamaki run. That was another example of just terrible storytelling. I mean, they brought the original She-Hulk back at the end of the Tamaki run, and then we get the whole Jennifer Walters She-Hulk dynamic that people don't want to see. And that was something that really annoyed me when they put her on the Avengers. Nobody wants to see this brutish, masculine acting She-Hulk. What they wanted to see was the fun, vivacious, feminine She-Hulk. And I believe, sadly, the only way we're going to see a character similar to that is if you go out here and pick up an E-Steam series story, because, again, people keep telling me that E-Steam reads like old school She-Hulk. And that is one of my more popular characters in the SJS Direct universe. And what's funny is I would release an E-Steam series book and almost people would pick it up almost immediately because it reminds them of She-Hulk, and the model for the story reminds them of old Lois Lane comics, two things that people thought would never work, but they work well when I'm releasing SJS Direct books. And you're going to see an example of that kind of story in the graphic novel if you pledge to pick it up. Because when you pledge to pick it up, you're going to get E-Steam No Good Deed, the comic adaptation of that story in the graphic novel. And that was the most popular E-Steam series story I ever produced. I released that back in 2013, I believe, and it got over 3,000 downloads on Kindle, and it was incredibly popular on Smashwords and Kindle. So it got over 3,000 downloads, and I wanted to put that in as a backup feature, again, because this was an old school superheroine taking on robbers, and that story, people loved that story. So I want to give you that story finally in a comic book form. I worked on that script as well, and that's, again, going to be part of the graphic novel that is going to be on Indiegogo. So that's going to be a part of that comic, and you're going to get both of those stories in that book. So it's going to be a 62-page graphic novel, and I want to give you your money's worth in that graphic novel. You're going to get, I believe, a good quality set of comics in that graphic novel, and with those two stories. And I'm hoping to use that as the foundation for future graphic novels, because with this graphic novel, what I want to do is give you a main ISIS feature and then give you a backup feature of another character. So that's the plan for this. If this project gets funded, I want to be able to give you more graphic novels of characters in the SJS Direct universe. And I also want to give you those positive stories of the African-American experience in these novels, because in these stories, you are getting two Black characters, and you're getting a story where we see the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Because when it comes down to a lot of people today, they want to make Black characters, but then we don't get to see who they are as people. And that's something I want to really focus on with the stories I do these days, because creating a Black character, as I see it, that's just identity politics. But creating a character who is Black, that is something that's going to get people to see Black people from a balanced perspective and a humanized perspective. And that's something I want to really focus on with this graphic novel. And I hope to get this graphic novel, again, in the hands of readers sooner rather than later. So I'm hoping everybody, donates to the Indiegogo, because I really want to get this project in the hands of everybody. And I want it to be a great showcase for Bill Walko's art and a great showcase for my storytelling. And I want to show that my type of storytelling, is enjoyable to readers. And that's what I want to do with this Indiegogo. to and that's what I want to do with this Indiegogo. So that's what I launched today. It's right up. It's live today. Yeah, it was a third way. Neil started selling a third wave feminist to take a strong, confident heroine, and yeah, that's what they do. They transpose themselves and their ideas on the character, and that's not something a good writer does. A writer does not transpose and project their views on the character. They let that character be themselves. And She-Hulk was a fun, vivacious woman who lived life, and that was what made her so much fun. It's okay that I have to agree with everything you say about the She-Hulk because she was a really great character. I mean, if I had was able to do a run on She-Hulk, it would probably be looking a lot like these E-Steam series books that I'm doing right now. And I would really play up a lot of the humor in a She-Hulk book. If I were writing it, I would play up a lot of the sex appeal. I would play up a lot of the action adventure. And again, it would be more like what I'm doing with E-Steam right now, where I'm showing this devilish diva who goes out here and she just runs into situations and stuff kind of happens. And as she's working, she's taking on these bad guys as she's working. And that's what I do with the E-Steam series books. It's sort of like a Lois Lane type story, but the Lois Lane has superpowers. So that's what I do with E-Steam, and people really like it. And the last couple of books, I mean, I have ones that have gotten close to 1,000 downloads, like Demons Anonymous. That one did extremely well, and there's another one that did very, very well. But a couple of them, Fairy Tale was Fairy Tale. Fairy Tale was one that just did extreme. That was one where E-Steam fought Morgan Le Fay, and people love that story. It's just that one, people, they downloaded it like crazy, and that one and Little Girl Lost, they like a lot. So when it comes down to the She-Hulk, she should have stayed fun and vivacious, but Alana Smith wanted to make She-Hulk an avatar of herself, just like Sana Amanat wants your Kamala Khan to be her avatar, and that's preventing those characters from actualizing their potential. Now, I understand that a character has to be themselves, they have to have their own voice, and they have to be who they're going to be. And if you get in the way, you're going to prevent that character from actualizing their potential and being who they are. When it comes down to me, I let the characters tell their story. I don't try to tell their story for them. Okay, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me any questions, and I'll be eager to answer them. Let me see, how am I buffering? Okay, reading a story on Twitter, and they're talking about there might be a Ragnarok coming to Disney. That's on Bleeding Fool, but as I see it, Disney is getting ready to fold Marvel into one of their divisions. I did see the Richard Donner version of Superman 2 when I was a little kid. I saw that version of Richard Donner. I saw the Donner version back when they put it on ABC TV when I was a little kid. I remember that version. So it's a much better version than the other version of Superman 2. I'm more of an Italian food guy, Edward. I'm a pizza guy. So I like pizza, calzone, lasagna. That's all I cook in the house mostly. Chinese is something that's secondary for me, but I like Italian. Yeah, Disney probably is realizing how bad they screwed up. Based on this Bleeding Fool article that I recently read, yeah, they screwed up pretty bad. I read a Bleeding Fool article, and they're talking about Ragnarok coming to Marvel Comics due to the poor sales, and the fact that comic shops are closing, and that the national top 100 aren't even selling 20,000 copies, which is pretty bad. I mean, that's 20,000 isn't even, again, a neighborhood here in the Bronx. So as I look at it, yeah, the comic book industry is on the brink of collapse. I did see the Vader fan film, Ghost Skittle, but comic industry is in really bad shape. And yeah, they might be folding some of these divisions in. And what they may do, again, is cut a lot of jobs. And that's going to be really bad. And the only way people are going to get comics, again, is through these Indiegogos from people like your Ethan Van Skyvers, your people like Richard Meyer, and people like Josh Howard and myself, who can go out here and raise the money for those comics and get them to readers. So that may be the only way we can get comics, because when it comes down to these divisions, they're going to cut things down to the bone, and they're only going to publish maybe these reprints, or like what DC is doing right now, these 100-page giants that they're selling to places like Target and Walmart. And that may be the only way we can get comics. And that's going to, again, they're going to only focus on the core people that are out there. They're only going to focus on Batman's, Superman's, or characters people know. So the second tier characters, we may never see them again. Yeah, that heyday is gone, Edward Gaines. The days of 90s X-Men where they were selling 500,000 to 1 million, that day is gone. I remember, again, 500. It was like X-Men, yeah, they were selling like 500,000 units back in 87, 88. Oh, they were cleaning up. I mean, books were selling so well that they were pushing X-Men twice a month when I was in high school and the freshman year. I remember buying X-Men twice a month. And they were, again, selling 500,000 units. Spider-Man was selling 500,000 units. And they're not selling anywhere near that. I mean, 20,000, again, that's not even a neighborhood here in New York City. Yeah, the pre-sales for War of the Realms has been pretty bad, but that's because it's one of those long, drawn-out type stories. And when you have people creating these stories that take months and even a year to finish, that doesn't give people an incentive to go out here and buy comics. What they don't understand, what a lot of people who are in comics today, they don't understand, is that comics are sold with the book in hand. And these days, I believe we need to go back to a model where you have books that people can read in one sitting and one volume. And that's one of the models I try to apply with my ISIS series books that I want to take over to the comic market. And that's one of the things I want to do with this Indiegogo, is show that it's possible to create a comic that people can read in one volume. And that's all they want. They don't want, to be forced to keep buying 20 titles across the catalog. They want to be able to pick up their favorite character and just buy their character without having to deal with a whole bunch of continuity baggage, or being forced to pick up other books. So when you're doing comics, you really want to sell the book in hand, because the book that you sell in hand is going to sell the other books on the back list, and it's going to sell the next book and get people anticipating the next book. It's hard to do that these days, because what they do with these books is they try to sell you these books on this event model, which I believe is obsolete, because when it comes down to the event model, it just doesn't work anymore. This event model, as I see it, it's a dead model, because what they want to do with the event is try to sell these B and C list books. But if these B and C list books just can't carry their weight, then there's no need to keep trying to push them and push those characters. You have to push the characters that are going to go out here and sell. And the thing with this whole War of the Realms is it's a been there, done that story, and then it's going to take place over multiple books, which is really something that I believe the industry doesn't need right now. What we need to do is get back to selling individual books and individual copies, and then letting those stories sell themselves. This is another issue I have with the comic book industry, is them trying to sell an event instead of trying to sell a story. And you really need to just sell individual stories like what I do with my books. With my books like Bride of Dracula, which is one of the best-selling SJS Direct ISIS series books, it was just a story that, while it was connected to the Vampire Saga, you didn't feel like you had to go out and buy, you know, Night of the Vampires or Escape from Transylvania to get the whole story. Now, all three of these books can come together to form the entire Vampire Saga, but they're all single, self-contained stories. And once you read one book, you don't have to go out here and buy the other books unless you want to. So when I do stories like the Vampire Saga, you can buy all three if you want to get the whole story, but you don't have to buy all three of the books to get the whole story. So that's something I do for my readers, and I believe that's what Marvel needed and DC needed to do for their readers, is not force them to go out and buy books. They just need to let the readers choose what they want to choose. Same thing for Isis the Beauty Myth and Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. Both of these stories, they interconnect, but because they're told in single self-contained volumes, you don't feel forced to go out here and continue buying books. It's like, okay, this story starts the saga, but then this one follows it up, and you're not going to get lost if you pick up either one. You could pick up either one, and you're not going to get lost. You're going to be right wherever you are, because every story is an entry point, and you're never going to get lost. And with the ISIS graphic novel, the All That Glitters, you're not going to get lost, because this story, again, is self-contained, and it's an entry point in and of itself. So you're not going to get lost. You're just going to be able to pick up the story and come right in and know who ISIS is, know who East-Team is, and know who all the characters in the SJS Direct universe are without ever having to pick up any other books. So it's not going to be a problem. So there's no need to buy tie-ins. There's no need to buy anything. You can just pick up one. I did hear about Batman Damned from the Black Label and how it just crumbled as a story. And I also heard about how they're having delays with it. And I also heard about Batman's Privates. And that was a disaster overall. This was a chance for DC to really, you know, with the Black Label, take themselves to any sort of other level. And instead, your Dan Dido went right to the gutter with that story. Instead of letting the story stand on the merits, he had to go and interject Bruce Wayne's privates into the story. And that prevented the story from really catching on. I believe with a little bit of editorial oversight, that story could have caught on in and of itself. But because they wanted to generate this controversy, it wound up impeding the growth of that book and prevented it from actualizing its potential in terms of sales. And that's another big problem with a lot of comic book industry people, is that they're not really focused on sales. Now, when I do SJS Direct, I'm always focused on sales. And because I'm always focused on sales, I'm always trying to reach new readers, reach new audiences, and I'm always trying to go out here and, again, put that positive foot forward. It's something that I believe is important, because if you're a writer, you want to get sales. And the more sales you get, the more readers you can get, because that's how you build your overall word of mouth. You build your word of mouth by going out here and writing great stories, and then you build an even greater audience word of mouth by going out here and sharing with the readers. Like what I try to do with the YouTube videos and what I do with the live streams is I try to form a relationship with my readers so they can get to know me, and they can get to know my work. Supremo says that if I do another book, I can rent out pages, and I may do that in the future. If I can do that, if I can get some ad revenue that way, I would rent out pages of the next graphic novel if I can get this one funded. That's something I would look into, and if there were any ads that would want to do that, I would love to do that with them. You know, put ad space in between certain pages, but that would just be like any other commercial comic book. I remember back in the day, you would have comics and they would have ads for candies, they would have ads for video games, and that would enable the comic company to pay their costs for printing. So they would offset their costs for printing by going out here and advertising industries like video games and things like candy that were appealing to younger audiences. And that's something I would love to do if we were able to get this Indiegogo funded. Okay, I'm gonna. Oh, I would love to have some fan art in there. If you guys want some fan art and you want to send me some fan art, I would feature that in the back of this current one for the Indiegogo. That's something I would love. I want to put in there as well, because when it comes down to print-on-demand books, there's a certain amount of pages that need to be filled, and this book is going to have 62 pages of story, but I believe it's going to be about 72, 73 pages. So I would love to have some fan art or some guest pinups to go in the back. And if you guys want that in there, I will put that in there. And I would even go out here and ask some of the other comic artists out there if they would want to feature some of their art in the graphic novel. So if we can meet the funding goals, I would love to have that inside of the ISIS graphic novel. And I would also like to have that featured as some of the stretch goals as posters or as trading cards. So I would love to do that if we can get this project funded. And I know it's a major challenge, so we're a long way from there, but I would love to have fan art. I would love to have guest pinups. And I would love to feature that as posters. I mean, this is my first time working on this type of project overall, but I would love to do all of that for everyone. For the Indiegogo, I want to have all that for you guys, and I want to make sure that you guys get a really great book and a really great reading experience, and I want to be able to give you guys some extras as well. So if I can get the funding, I would go out here and try to get some other stuff printed if we can do that. So all it takes is we can meet the initial goals, then I will come up with some extras for stretch goals. I would love to give you guys some posters or some trading cards or things like that, but I just need to get the money together to get this project funded. And that's something I want to do for everyone. What would you guys want for this Indiegogo in addition to just the paperback version or the ebook version? Just let me know, and I'll be glad to try to go out here and try to get it for you, because I'm all about serving my customers, and I'm all about trying to give my customers the very best. I want you guys to have a top quality comic, and I want you to have a great reading experience in that comic. So that's something I want to do for you. Because as I see it again, everybody complains about books, SJW books, and they complain about SJW heroines. And I want to give everybody an opportunity to see what a heroine would be like in a comic. I want to give you a fun heroine. I want to give you a fun story. And I can only do that with your help. So in order for me to do that, I need you guys to go out here and tell everybody about the Indiegogo. I need everybody to go out here and pledge to the Indiegogo, because every dollar you guys pledge gets me that much closer to my goal. Every dollar you guys pledge helps me get towards getting this book out. And that's something I want to see, again, done. I want to see an ISIS graphic novel come to fruition. I want to see this graphic novel in the hands of readers, and I want to reach readers with that with this Indiegogo, so that I can reach those, so that more we can have that example of what a strong heroine is, instead of us go out here and have these feminist ideas that they're trying to push out here and tell us that's a strong woman. Because to me, again, a strong woman is about strength of character. It's about standing up for what you believe in. It's about having that internal character. That's something I have not seen in your Kamala Khans. That's not something I've seen in your Captain Marvels. That's not something I have seen in your any of these Vertigo books. I mean, I've read so many of these so-called SJW books that want to push the strong heroine, and they're not showing any of the traits that I know my readers have enjoyed in ISIS series books, E-Steam series books, books like Spinsterella, books like The Thetas, and even books like my first book, which was a black-on-black romance, A Recipe for Success. In all of those books, I show you strong heroines, and I show you that they can be compelling and entertaining. And I want to bring that type of story to comic books, and that's the type of story I want to bring to the comic book medium. I'm going to get ready to wrap the stream up in a couple of minutes, and I hope everybody goes out to the Indiegogo. I'm hoping you guys put in your pledges, because I want to get this book out to you as soon as possible. The Indiegogo is going to go on until May 4th, I believe. So you have 60 days to put in your pledges. I'm going to keep talking about this Indiegogo in all of my videos. And I'm hoping that we can make this happen, because I would love to get this comic out to you. I would love to get this comic out to everybody out here. And Indiegogo, because we have a long way to go, and I really want to have, I want this one to be as successful as Diversity in Comics, Jawbreaker's Lost Soul, or Cyber Frog from Ethan Van Sciver. I would love to see this project, you know, have that type of success. And again, I believe in not complaining about bad comics, but trying to create a solution. And with this comic, I want to give my readers a solution to a problem which everybody complains about, which are these SJW books, which feature so-called strong heroines, by showing you a model for what could be used to write strong heroines and write compelling stories featuring strong heroines. So I'm hoping everybody comes out for the Indiegogo, and I'm hoping you also try my work on in paperback as well. See if I can. You can pick up ISIS All That Glitters in paperback right now, and it's going to be in ebook format this March. So I'm hoping you'll be there to pick up the story, and I'm hoping you come out and support the Indiegogo today. Thank you very much for watching the live stream. I'm going to have another live stream tomorrow, and that one will be one where I will talk about how to get started as a self-publisher, and I will be talking about the things you can use to go out here and start your own publishing platform. Thank you for watching this live stream. I'm going to end this one right now. And again, I'm hoping you guys put in your pledges for the Indiegogo.